We're live.
We're back.
We're back to talk about the laws of human nature,
Correct.
specifically law number 5. So we've now gone through the first 4 and we're breaking them down one by one. And law 5 is become an elusive object of desire. This is the law of covetousness.
It's crazy.
So
It's
be
amazing.
so to become a elusive object of desire. What does that mean to you, and what do you think about it? Because Robert Greene really gets into ways that you can become that to people.
Right. Well, um, how do I become an object of desire for people? At this stage in my life,
Gonna be difficult.
it's going to be extremely difficult. And the only thing that I can think of that I can bring to the table is maybe a little bit of wisdom, from all the years that I've lived and been in business. And uh, I have done a few things. So I have some experience behind me. And so I bring that to the table, and maybe that can be an elusive object of desire, my knowledge on certain things.
Yes, and one thing I've noticed, a lot of people come to you and say, hey, they ask you advice, like, because they know family is a big part of your success and business. And so they ask, how do you do those things? And they're coming to you for maybe advice on those areas because you seem to have been able to attain that. You have a family that's you've always pushed to keep united,
Mhm.
and that's a constant something to
It's
then
it's a it's a road under construction.
always.
Always.
And then there's the success in business, which people look at you and they want to ask you. So maybe that's what people desire from, let's say, you.
It's interesting that you would say that, because not to toot my own horn in any way or form, because I don't have the answers.
Yeah.
I'm here to tell everybody today, I don't have the answers. And I'm looking for the answers just like the next guy out there or the next lady.
Mm-hmm.
But in my welding class, I'm taking a welding class. Actually, it's a metal fabrication course. And this is the third semester I take it. A young man approached me to see how I could advise him on some financial matters. And then another young man approached me and said, "Hey, can you help me quote this job for me?" This
Hmm.
the latter one, it's I have a little bit of issue with, because I'm new to this world. Um, but yeah, for some reason, maybe it's the gray hair or the way I portray myself. I try to bring a certain degree of stability, if I can, wherever I go.
Yeah.
And the idea is to continue to learn something new every day, which I tell my grandkids always, and to try to help your fellow human being in any way that you can, as long as in the process of helping that person, you don't harm yourself.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, those are what you believe in, and
that's what I
people.
believe in.
I think maybe people are drawn to that. People want what the other person has. That's what Robert Greene gets into, right?
Right,
And he says that's human nature,
right,
that we're always gonna want what the other person has because we see it as better. And
right.
that's the idea of the grass is always greener.
Correct. And the thing is that, you know, I've been fortunate to, the good Lord has blessed us in many ways, but there are trials and tribulations in every family, including ours,
Yeah.
and in every business, including our businesses, and
Yeah.
nothing is perfect.
Well, that's that's what he gets into in the chapter. When you get close enough,
There you go.
the person that you think you want their life, when you get close enough, you realize you actually don't want all those problems and all those issues.
Right.
You're only seeing one side of things.
Correct.
So
Correct.
yeah, absolutely. Every family has issues, even
Every
though
family.
the one that seems to have it figured out.
Yeah. In fact, this week, and also on one of the party we went to, a young lady was asking me a lot of questions regarding family.
Right.
And the first thing I said was, look, I don't have the answers. However, this is how I would approach this, or
Yeah.
this is my 2 cents on this, because, nobody has the answers. Now, a man like Robert Greene, another monster like Jordan Peterson, okay, they do so much research and they do this day in and day out. These are people that we should actually listen to and pluck
Yeah.
whatever fits into our lifestyle.
But also
Pluck it.
they're human and they
Yeah.
may have a flawed perspective, but
Yes.
so it's also taking that into account. But I agree there are people that we should listen to. Um Now in this law, to kind of get more into become an elusive object of desire, he's explaining that people put more value on things that are seem to be scarce. And it reminded me, I am aware of this hairstylist in Studio City
Okay.
that he calls himself the curl doctor,
Oh.
and he only cuts curly hair. That's
Oh
his
wow.
specialty. But when you try to reach out to schedule with him, and it's women, right? He cuts women's hair. You're gonna wait 6, 8 months, sometimes even longer,
He's a surgeon.
to be able to see him. Exactly. So
He's
that's
performing surgery on hair.
on hair, and that's how good he is.
Right.
But one thing that I found out
How about that?
through an inside source is that you gotta wait. Let's say you had curly hair and you wanted your haircut. You're gonna wait 8 months. You're a new client, but
No, I won't.
it was
I-
you wouldn't do it,
no.
but people do,
Yes.
and they pay a
And
good
God
chunk of
bless them
money
for
for
it.
it.
Yeah, yeah. God bless them for it.
Now, if you're an existing customer of his,
Okay.
or if you know him personally, or he has, when you call his salon, another calendar, a separate book
Oh,
where
little black book.
he can see you sooner.
Oh,
And that's what I thought is exactly what Robert Greene is talking about. You create sometimes even a false sense of scarcity to create more, what appears to be more value. Now he's very good at what he does,
right,
and he, I'm sure is really booked out far away, but there's always, they can squeeze you in, and that's something that in business, in negotiations, and in business and in life, I think that if you're able to do these maneuver where you create more value because you're not around as much, if you're around all the time, then oh, he's Pablo's always here. But if you're not around as much, then people are going to say he must be really busy, he must be doing something, right?
right. And
That's
that's happened to us.
yeah.
It's very interesting because when I was working for an insurance company, it was a Fortune 500 company, right? The phrase, the grass is always greener, was always thrown out there. I would hear this all the time.
Yeah.
But there was one particular guy that had a really cool comeback. And every time somebody said, yeah, this and that, this, and goes, they would say, oh, the grass is always greener on the other side of the fence, right? And he would say, and so is the water bill.
The water bill is higher too.
The water bill is higher too. There's a reason why the grass is greener than yours on the other side of the fence and yours is not as green.
Mhm.
You're either putting more water, more fertilizer, you're getting up early, you're towing the ground, you are doing something, okay, that is making that grass greener.
Yeah.
And of course, we're applying it to being married, being in business, etc., etc. You apply it to a gamut of
Right.
things. You have to work at things. You can't be lazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anything worth obtaining has to be worked at, unless
Yeah.
you get extremely lucky and you hit the lotto.
Yeah.
And even then,
So yeah, that's interesting. That's another way to look at it. But it's human nature. And so what I like about this chapter is that he's saying, understand you're gonna feel this, other people are also going to feel this. And if you want to use this to your advantage, kind of he lays out a way, which reminds me of the 48 laws of power. There's a one of the laws is using absence. Um,
Correct.
and so kind of goes hand in hand because this particular law, he's saying this is something that people are going to do. They're always going to, what, once you reach a certain level, let's say your goal, human nature is to want to continue to grow and get the next thing. And so I think it's, we talked about it today. You were saying that you're more in the present
Than
than
ever.
you've ever been.
Correct.
Because, is it because
I'm
when you would
older.
reach a goal, you would be thinking already of the next, or why do you think that is?
I think it's because I'm older and I come to the realization that um, memento mori, right? So we're all gonna go one day, and by the law of numbers, I'm closer to the end than when I was 20. Nobody's got any guarantees, but I'm 65 years old. How much longer do I have left? Okay, now I don't dwell on this because, like I said in the short the other day, as long as you're in the on position, right? You're creating, your juices are flowing, you're in touch with your um, religion, your faith, your family and friends, you're moving forward. So the person that's creating, okay, is aware that one day this will come to an end, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you don't dwell on it. And in the process of this journey, you do the very best you possibly can every single day. And the only way to do the very best you possibly can every single day is to be 110% present at the moment.
Yeah.
And so I'm very, but you hit the nail on the head right now. And I kind of digressed a little bit. Let me go back to what you just said. Robert Greene, on your point, says you need to know when to pull back. And he says that this is the essence of the art of this law. So you hit the nail on the head with that. And it to me is very interesting because I sometimes don't know exactly when to pull back, you
Yeah,
know?
it's maybe contrary to your nature, right?
Yeah.
Um,
But you hit the nail on the head, Mike. That's it.
yeah, absence has a primal effect on us. This is something that we don't control. It just takes us back, and that's what he gets into. He's like, the we needed this. Our ancestors needed this, right? Because that's what motivated them to continue to
Correct.
go on and seek more food, more refuge, whatever it was. If you go way back to the hunter gatherer days, I thought this quote was really cool, and you had also mentioned it previously. Pleasure isn't the fulfillment. No, pleasure isn't in the fulfillment, but in the pursuit.
That's right.
That's a
Can you say it
piece.
again so everybody can hear it? I was turning the page. Say
Yeah,
it again.
it's pleasure isn't in the fulfillment, but in the pursuit. And he credited Pierre Augustin Karen. I'm not sure the last name, but so what does that mean to you? That pleasure isn't in the fulfillment, but in the pursuit.
So, to me, what that means is that the journey to obtain something, I call it the hunt. You're out there hunting. You're hunting for a girlfriend. You're hunting for a wife. You're hunting for uh, wealth. You're hunting for uh, knowledge. The journey, okay, it's more meaningful than when you get the final product. Because what he's saying is the minute you get the product, let's say you want a big house, and the journey to get this house is a 3 year journey.
Mm-hmm.
The processes that you have to put in place, the discipline, the resilience, that being constant, okay, the learning factors, all of that changes you. And if you're enjoying that path, when you get the house, you say, oh, I got it. I got the big house with the swimming pool, the big yard, whatever the case is. He says that the moment that you obtain that, it begins to diminish in value because now you already got it.
You already got it. Yeah.
And he says, hey, look, I credit human nature for this. And so,
Hmm.
you know, so the journey, and if the journey transforms you,
Right.
it's like the other day you were talking about the caterpillar,
Yeah. The butterfly.
the butterfly. You should throw it here real quick, maybe,
Yeah. No, that we were talking about um the butterfly needs to struggle to get out of the cocoon. That's what. And if you try to help it out, its wings won't be strong enough when it by the time but when it gets out. So it has to go through that strain to finally break through and then be able to fly
and be able to survive.
and be able to make
And
it.
if you try to help it come out of the cocoon,
You heard it.
you hurt it
Yeah, you
and
could kill it.
potentially kill it.
Yeah,
Because that's, I
yeah.
mean, I'm telling you.
Now, um, why is it so this is human nature that
That's what Robert Greene says.
when we have something, we it's less valuable to us. So has it ever happened to you where you bought something, a watch, a car, a house, something that you have been working really, really hard to get, and then once you got it, the value of it went down for you, or has anything that you've obtained like that kept its value?
I'm guilty as charged, just like he talks in the book. I'm one of the bunch, okay? I've acquired something, and I'm really proud that I acquired her or acquire it, not her, acquire it. And so um, it doesn't lose to me its value immediately, but over the time, you know, it becomes less of a, uh, the euphoria of being something new gets lost.
The novelty.
And by the way, that happens in our career in real estate, where you have a property when it hits the market first. Oh my God, there's a new listing on the market and everybody wants to look at it and the euphoria, this and that. And if you're not careful how you market this property, it stays on the market for 30 days. Well, now, the euphoria of the newness goes away.
That's the psychology if
That's
of the marketing behind it.
that's what you're dealing with. That's
Yeah,
what,
because people begin to ask, well, why is it still available?
right.
Why is that guy still single? Why is that girl still single? You know, I've,
Something wrong.
something's wrong. You know, do they not can they not commit to a relationship? We were listening to Bill Maher and Jordan Peterson earlier today
Yeah.
on our drive, and Bill Maher doesn't believe in marriage nor having children, and Jordan Peterson does in both. And so it's interesting to hear them
Go at it.
share their perspectives.
And they're quite civil about it.
Yeah,
They talk about it. I think they have like opposing views in many things,
yeah,
but they're civil about it.
yeah.
You
It
know,
was a
it,
cool listen,
it's a cool listening,
but
and it's pleasant to I'm the audience of that, and it was pleasant to hear that.
yeah,
I have my own ideas, so when somebody says something, oh, how can you, right? But, it's,
yeah. And in this chapter, Robert Greene brings up Coco Chanel,
yes,
who was an orphan at a young age, went to school in a convent,
yes,
which to be a nun, right? And then, but she was rebellious always. And what later on in life, she ended up pursuing men that were married, men that already were in a relationship.
yeah,
And he gets into explaining that she would pursue them because it was something that you couldn't have. But then once she would have the man and, break that relationship or whatever, she wasn't interested in it anymore. And then he went to explain that she did that in her career as well. She would create something new. It was always something new, and people were drawn to her mystere, eventually creating the clothing, but then the perfume, right?
correct.
Chanel number 5. That there was a lot of, like, I guess, mystere behind how she created it,
Yeah.
and he gets
Well, he
into all
says
that.
it, create a flair or an air of mystery about you.
Yeah.
And he also talks about Michael Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
He says that Michael Jackson was a genius at actually doing this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
He knew exactly when to pull back. He actually controlled his marketing.
He wouldn't do a lot of interviews. Yeah. There is something about that if you're too available,
Right.
and everybody knows your opinion on everything, then they feel that they know you. So a little bit of that is taken away. I wonder, like with people who, like a Joe Rogan, who shares a lot of his views on things, I wonder how it works from him, or a Jordan Peterson or a Robert Greene, because they share a lot of how they think about things. So is there maybe less value on that person because you already know all of their, or you think you know all of their views?
I think that, I think no. Okay. I think that these people are in a constant search for learning
Mm,
and obtaining wisdom. And listening to an opposing point of view may stir up something where you might think, oh, you know what? There's something to this. Okay.
mm,
And thereby, as you do the research on that particular difference, you embark yourself in the journey of acquiring more knowledge, but now you're branching off from your main core. Even though Robert Greene says that you can never change your main core,
yeah, your character.
your character, okay? But if you're willing to listen, right, and something sparks an interest in you, then you can go out and research that, and
Mm,
that may stimulate you in another area
yeah.
where you may have a change of heart to a certain extent.
Yeah, so you're not that same person. You're constantly evolving
I think so.
your ideas. You're willing to entertain new ideas. Bill Maher, the I've listened to quite a bit of his inner podcasts, not all of them, but he doesn't seem to be somebody that's willing to change his ideas.
Okay.
However, a Peterson, a Rogan, a Green, they seem open to that idea. They're not married to a concept or an
I don't
idea.
listen to Bill Maher that much, so I wouldn't be able to comment on that.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I'll tell you one thing. When I was much younger,
Mm-hmm.
okay, like when I was in my 20s, um, there were some people in the family that were able to decipher what my next move was.
Mm.
And that bothered me incredibly. Okay? That bothered me tremendously because I didn't want people to know what my next move was necessarily going to be. But there were some people in the family that had me down.
Mm.
And so I've made it a point to become unpredictable. Okay? I want to be somewhat unpredictable.
Yeah.
I don't want, what was it? Castellano got
Paul
shot.
Castellano.
Paul
Yeah.
Castellano got shot because every night or every Sunday, Friday night or whatever, he went to eat at that restaurant
Yeah.
and he created that thing and then they waited for him and right?
Yep. Yep.
So I want to be to a certain extent somewhat unpredictable. Okay.
Yep.
I still stay within the frame of my core and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Um, but yeah, it would
Yeah,
bug
I
me a
think
lot when I was younger.
I think that's a good thing. Yeah, you don't want to be somebody that people think they've got you all figured out.
Right. No, you don't.
Especially in business, in
Correct.
negotiating. One thing that I do in business and creating, I don't know, I guess becoming an elusive object of desire. When I schedule appointments, I give two available times and days. That's how I schedule. So if we're gonna schedule an appointment or something, I'm going to tell the person, hey, how's Wednesday or Friday at this time or this time. I don't give them the whole calendar and what's available, and you know you just, this is what's available. And I think people need a limited amount of options. Number one, it could create this idea of more value to you, but then also you get bombarded with too many options, too many choices, and that doesn't work well for human nature, it seems, either. You kind of need just a couple avenues to go.
Correct.
So that's one thing that I
Well,
have
you
done.
learned that as a salesman.
Yeah, yeah, this is in sales.
We're salespeople.
Yeah.
And you pick the two best options and you present it, especially when I was selling life insurance.
Yeah.
If I came up with six different options, you confuse potentially, right?
Yeah. Yeah. With life insurance, I would give three options.
There you go.
And then from there,
Max.
we would, you could move. Those are not the only options, but you provide three.
You provide three.
People are coming.
And that's after, sorry to interrupt. That's after you already had like a session with the person and asked some questions and so
Oh,
forth, and you
absolutely.
realize what is the importance in their life, what do they
Yeah,
want to do,
correct, correct.
right?
It's like, you go to the doctor, they check you out and everything, and then there's a couple things that it could be, right? A couple diagnoses or whatever the case,
Right,
because they've already assessed you a little bit. They're not just telling you it could be all of these things.
right, right,
So, yeah, I think I don't know, I'm not all that into what he's talking about where you're doing this intentionally to people to make yourself less available. I'm not all into playing those games
okay,
personally,
uh-huh.
but I do see the value in it. And yeah, people that are not always around or not always available, you just seem to when they are around, you seem like it's a little bit more of a surprise. It's a little bit more you want to be around that person,
Right.
you know. Um, you could also go too far where you're just people forget about you too, so
I think that as long as you bring value
yeah.
to people's lives, you're going to be appreciated. And the other thing that he said, which I thought was very interesting, he said people's interest in you, in me, is paper thin. You know, they're not interested in you. And he says it, he says people don't want to hear about the truth, you know, and the righteous thing. They want to be, they want to have their mind stimulated,
Yeah.
you know. The people don't want to hear about what's truthful and righteous. They people want to hear, how do I stimulate my mind? And then he gives the example of games you play as a child, and he gave an example of a game that has all these rules, and then another game that the rules can be made as you go along. And inevitably, the one where you can make the rules as you go along is by far the most, thought after.
Yeah.
So, some of that stuff is just really, really interesting. Yeah, he says people don't want truth and honesty. What they want is their imagination to be stimulated. I got it here. And that to me is very interesting because I thought people want to know the truth. I thought people, but he's saying no. And so he wrote the book
Yeah.
and he does a ton of research.
Yeah. Yeah. He gave a couple other examples. So he gave Coco Chanel.
Yeah.
um do you remember the other examples that he
Exodus,
I'm sorry.
Exodus, when Moses was, you know, when Moses were bringing, the Israelites out of Egypt,
That's right, out of slavery.
out of slavery, and they were wandering for 40 years because God didn't like what they were doing. So he gave that as an example
He gave it
also.
as an example because what God was giving them, like the manna and the food to eat, they were comparing it back to what they had when they were slaves, but it was better food, I guess. Actually, you bringing that up takes me back to a point. He says that when we reminisce, we tend to focus only on, let's say, the positive
You
things.
idealize.
Yeah, yeah. And so when you think of a past relationship, for example, you forget about all the stress, all the issues that were there, and you only think of the good times and the positive things in that relationship.
That's right.
And he brought the example up also of your childhood.
Correct.
Some people look back at their childhood and glorify it, let's say.
Correct.
Um, but you're not thinking about what were you actually, the anxiety you were
The
going through
stress,
as a
whatever.
kid. Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting how we do that. I do that. When you look back, and that's one thing that I've had several conversations with people, and let's say like the pandemic for me changed a lot of things in terms of my business. And
You boy. You can say that again.
And so I ended up, after the pandemic, selling my business
Wow.
and getting into a new career, right?
Yeah.
But
Wow.
sometimes I look back at life before the pandemic and I'm doing that. I'm like glorifying, and they were great times, right? It was a different world, I feel, pre-pandemic, pre
I think so too.
2020. I think it was a different world. Yeah. You think so too?
I think so too.
Yeah, so I'm finding myself glorifying that time period. Um and that's not good either. I think you got to be in the present.
But that's human nature.
It's
And
human
how can
nature.
you fight it? You have to be aware of it in order to be able to address it.
Well, what I'm doing by yeah, you're right. And I think by noticing that, hey, I'm glorifying this area, I remind myself, yeah, but look at what was happening at my life in that time. For example, I wasn't taking care of my health the way I am now. I can still improve at that too, but I there were things that I was doing. I was not sleeping well. I was,
Partying.
I was drinking 4 or 5 cups of coffee a day.
Oof,
I still drink a lot of coffee, but not that much. So there was things, yeah, I had alcohol in my life. So
partying. Left and
partying,
right.
yeah.
Nightclubs.
Well, not so much. Well, if we go way back, but that's one thing. And then when I realized, hey, those things were also part of my life. It wasn't just all these good things. It brings me back to the current state, and the present is the best place to be and moving forward. And I really like that quote where he's saying that pleasure is in the pursuit, right, of attaining that goal.
Correct.
Um, because I've heard it by a lot of people that it's the journey, it's the journey, it's not the
The hunt.
destination. Yeah,
The
it's
hunt.
the hunt.
Yeah.
And a lot of people want to
You're a
get,
hunter
yeah, people,
looking for whatever, a
the next meal.
property, a wife, the next meal, the
Yeah.
girlfriend, the car, the house, whatever. You're a hunter.
And if you're not
Enjoy that
hunting,
hunt.
if you're not hunting, then
Then you're in the off position.
yeah, yeah, you're losing that skill.
Correct.
That skill, and you're maybe sitting. That's why you talk about people that have retired, friends and people, they retire and then life, health, a lot of things go downhill because they don't find something new to hunt towards, whether it's a new hobby or something, right? It seems
I
that's why
agree.
you're never going to retire, right?
Um, I don't plan on it.
No.
I mean, traditionally, all my friends were way older than I was by 12, 15 years because traditionally I gravitated to the older folks because I thought they had the experience and they were wiser, and I was always picking somebody's brain. But the minute they retired, something happened. They fell down, broke a leg, or they were, they got sick. Something always happened
Yeah.
the minute they retire. It just seems like their acuity, their sharpness diminished. And what do I know? But there was a guy that I um, admire a lot, and he says, "Hey, you need a reason to get up every morning to go do something, and work may be one of them." Now, for the people out there that don't enjoy their job, well,
Hmm.
that would be, not so good. But if you happen to enjoy your job, then your job supposedly is not work. So there you go. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, hopefully you can find something that you enjoy doing. Um, become an elusive object of desire.
Well,
It's an interesting one.
one of the things that I can tell you with regards to youth, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm older now. And so you think about your youth and you say, you idealize, this
Yeah.
is what he says. This is what Robert Greene says after probably umpteen, how many hours of research. The man is just a tremendous, okay? He says, look, you idealize your youth because you're no longer that young, and you also idealize to a certain extent the health that went with it
Mm.
if you are diminishing in your health. And so, he brings up a lot of good points,
Yeah.
tremendous amount of good points.
Yeah, a lot of people would trade, right? They would say what I would do to have my youth back.
Absolutely. Well,
So, like, I still have my youth. And I should be enjoying it.
You know,
But
he
that's the
says
thing. You spend your youth trying to attain things, and there goes your youth. It's like we were talking about it to a gentleman that was against the Cuban Revolution. They threw him in jail in Cuba. Castro's regime threw him in jail from the age of 20 to the age of 30. So his
right,
10, so I said they took his youth from him.
10 years of his life.
10 years.
And one could argue the most productive, you know, from age 20 to age 30
They robbed him.
of, I'm not going to say the most productive years of his life, but definitely one of the most, where you're most energetic, you're looking for opportunities, you're looking for this, that, whatever, a career and
Well,
a
one
health.
thing he said was that a lot of the people he was in there with, in jail with, or prison, were, they didn't come out the same person. It messed with their head a lot.
For sure.
So, and I'm sure he has effects of it too. You were gonna say?
Well, I'll bring this up because I think this was towards the end.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, you know, you need to try to know yourself better, you know, compose your own movie. You know, you have endless possibilities. Do your, you know, it's your world, your work, you know, your relentless challenges. So what he's saying is, at the end of the day, is you getting to know yourself, you know, better, and that will bring out potentially the best in you as you learn to get to know yourself better.
Yeah.
He said that in, you know, in the end, the deeper the relationship that you have with yourself will bring you the calmness that you need. And so, you know, it's very interesting. I mean, the man is something else, you know, and what do you do?
Yeah. No, I thought it was a really good chapter,
It
and
is a good chapter. It really had me thinking quite a bit, actually, to be
yeah.
honest with
And this book is about analyzing yourself a lot because he's giving historical examples, but how does how are we like that in our life? When do we catch ourselves wanting something that we don't have? You know, you're talking to me sometimes
you. All
about
the
like,
time.
yeah, yeah, all the time.
If you want to be true to yourself,
I personally think social media and is not good for that because our human nature, because I really believe that this is, it's even as a kid, you see two kids and they want the toy that the other kid
the
has, and
same
they,
one.
yeah, and they get jealous because that one is a different color or bigger or
Oh,
whatever.
God.
So that's, you're born with that. That's human nature. But um social media, we're portraying a certain aspect of our life, let's say only the good side most of the time, and then people have a false sense of like who, how they're doing, what they have. And so by being on social media, if you're using it for that purpose and you're just scrolling, I think you could get lost in that world of wanting what other people have. It's not a
It's
good
not good.
place.
No,
I
that's
don't
not a
think
good
so.
thing.
No.
Jordan Peterson says it all the time.
Yeah.
You're right. You're absolutely correct. You need to catch yourself and be careful and pull back. That's what he's saying. You need to know when to withdraw.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
we've got, I think, young kids that are addicted to their cell phones and things of this nature, which is, I don't think that's ultimately all that good.
No, it's not,
I know we have a
especially,
friend that we argue with all the time. He's all for artificial intelligence and
yeah.
stuff like that, but
I think
who
we're,
knows?
yeah, we're losing some of the basic skills of talking to people face to face and
For sure.
by just being on the phone.
No doubt about it.
Anything else you want to
No, no, you covered it all.
add? Okay, I'll
All
wrap
right.
it up.
All
Thank
right.
you.